Thank you for listening to the PFFUI podcast. On today's show, President Tony Murray and Vice President Mike Whitehead discuss the Indiana General Assembly and PFFUI's legislative priorities. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the PFFUI podcast. I am Erik Scheub and I'm joined today by President Tony Murray and Vice President Mike Whitehead. And we're going to be talking today about the Indiana General Assembly and the legislative session. Session has been underway for about 2 weeks now, and we are tracking numerous bills. So, Tony, why don't you tell us what the PFFUI is doing at the State House right now?
All right, so we're well into it. This is week 2, as you mentioned, Erik, of the legislative session. This is a long session, so we're going to be probably going through the end of April. So a long way to go, but a lot has happened in the first 2 weeks of the session. But before we go into this, I just want to mention that one thing, too. Next month, we're going to be hosting about 100 of our union leaders from locals across the state at our partnership education program that we offer classes to these leaders coming in. Through the IFF, they're sending a cadre of instructors to provide this, and then the following day, on February 21st, we will have our half-a-day Thomas H. Miller Legislative Conference here in Indianapolis. And it's also a good time. We'll have a lot of speakers, maybe legislators, maybe other people that are involved in the legislative process come over and talk to our members and leaders assembled in the conference. But it's a great time for our members also to, before they hit the road back home, to stop over at the State House and visit with their legislators to help, I think, us, Mike, Tom, and I, to give a little extra push to the priority legislative pieces that we're working on. It always helps to hear from the members back home when you're a legislator at the state capitol.
All right, great. So, Mike, about how many bills are the PFFUI currently tracking right now?
We're tracking probably 100 bills, maybe a little more, and I expect it to go up another 50 or 60 before it's all done. They started dropping a week ago, and they've been dropping 50 to 100 a day. So we're going through and finding our bills that legislators have filed on our behalf, and then looking at bills that other legislators are dropping.
Oh, wow. So maybe we can take an opportunity to explain to our members how we track legislation at the State House, because hundreds of bills sounds like a lot, and it sounds like a lot for just 3 people. So what are some ways that we track those bills at the state level?
Well, we have a program that we use that it shows the bills that have been dropping, and then we can go in and prioritize and mark the ones that are ours, and it gives us alerts when they're going into committee. But I wanted to start off with, we've got our legislative priorities, and we started working on our legislation this session. We started working on it the day after last session ended. We started talking to the legislators about the ones that we wanted to carry our legislation, doing the legwork on who we needed to carry it and explaining the bills and running all the traps. We started meeting with the other organizations that could be affected by some of the legislation that we wanted done, and explaining what our bill or what our ideas did, so we could answer all the questions well before this session started. So a lot of our priority bills we've been talking about for months before they ever hit the State House.
And I would say, generally speaking, to start forming your legislative agenda, you don't do that on the first day of the legislative session. Like Mike said, it takes a lot of preparation, a lot of discussions a lot of shared ideas, I think, to hone these things in.
We've had great success at the General Assembly for quite a few years now, and it's not by accident. It's because we do all the legwork beforehand. And you'll see a lot of our legislation will pass unanimous out of both chambers, and a lot of other organizations don't get that kind of success.
So what are PFFUI's legislative priorities for this session?
Well, we've got a few, and a lot of our stuff is moving early. We've got our police and fire merit that passed out of our convention in 2020 unanimous. Currently in law, both the firefighters and the legislative branch have to vote they want a merit system to get one. What we're wanting to do is reverse it to where you will have a merit system unless both parties vote to not have a merit system. That one actually passed out of committee and passed out committee unanimous. And it's going to the next week. It'll go to the floor for amendments, second reading amendments, and then pass. It should pass next week out of thirds, and then at halftime, the second half, it'll go over to the Senate to start the process all over. That's one of our priorities. Another one is firefighter rights. There's in current statute, there's a law that speaks about how firefighters are disciplined, how that process works, but it excluded fire districts and fire territories. And we think what happened when that was put in law, there wasn't any in existence. So we've went in and added fire territories and fire districts to existing law. That actually passed out of committee unanimous, and it's going to be going before the full House next week for seconds and third readings.
And that's I think, on that particular bill, we have more and more districts and territories being formed those are our members. And I think that it's really important that all of our members receive the same protections and benefits, under the law. So it's important that we dive into this and get it. And I think overall we really have great bill sponsors, both primary sponsors, and we have a lot of our pieces are getting great response and co-sponsorship as well. People, legislators signing on, but yeah.
And then another one of our priority bills is we're asking for an increase in our COLA. In the 77 fund, we're fortunate that we're only one of two of the 9 pension systems that Indiana has that has an automatic COLA. It's the 77 fund and the judges.
And Mike, sorry, but what does COLA mean, just for some of our listeners who might not?
It's a cost of living raise.
Okay.
When you retire in the 77 fund, we have the cost of living raise, and it's tied to the CPI, but we have a max cap on that at 3%. Well, historically, we haven't went over the 3%, except last year with the high inflation, the CPI was over 8%, but we were capped at 3%. So we're asking to increase that to 5%. And that's not an easy lift because one of 3 things have to happen. One, there's got to be an influx of money into the fund, or 2, the fund's going to take a hit and the actuarially funding is going to drop, or 3, the employers are going to have to pay more money to keep it the actuarially funded. What we're asking is the state put money in the 77 fund to keep it actuarially funded. We don't want to hurt the fund, but we also want to help our retired members during these times of high inflation. It's a cost of a little over $90 million to do this. So it's a heavy lift, but we've been running the traps. We've got a bill now, and we're hoping to get a hearing. It's going to end up getting recommitted to Ways and Means. It's a long ways to get it passed, but we're there working every day to get this done. Also, in this same bill is a technical corrections. When we had the 25-year longevity put into law, where you could bargain up to 25 years longevity in your pension. What was passed and what was printed in law was different. What was passed was up to 25 years longevity. What was printed was less than 25 years. So in this bill here, we're correcting that to make sure it says up to 25 years.
And that helps, that particular thing really helps our locals negotiate for an additional 5 years of longevity, which this law says can be applied to creating your pension base. So it's very helpful. It gives some options. It provides some tools. One thing that I'll say with regard to our efforts on increasing the COLA max in the 77 fund is, it does take a lot of work, I think, in discussions. It is the appropriate time to do it because we are in a period of high inflation, and our retirees are certainly feeling that, who are on fixed incomes. But at the same time, it's a budget year, so this is the appropriate time to be speaking about this. And, like Mike said, over $90 million is not a simple thing to do, but we really feel like that's the right thing to do, and asking the legislature to insert those funds into this effort to increase our COLA is appropriate. And, our predecessors and the way the 77 fund has been designed and how our union and the state FOP, the attitude towards trying to keep the fund solvent and balanced so it's here for our members today who are on the retirement, but also for our members in the future is very important. And we have demonstrated good behavior and responsible reaction to that. So I think that we have been responsible, and this is the best approach to try to do that. And like Mike said, we'll be working every single day to see how we can get this going. And I'm learning this process is a little bit complex when you're talking about making law and policy in the State House.
So what are some other things that our members can look forward to coming from the State House
We're
this
also
session?
looking at, still on our priority list, is, and both of these bills actually passed out of committee also. Like I said, we've had a pretty good successful week. One of them is taking care of our 911 dispatchers in Marion County and around the state. There's a law in the books, or there's no law in the books that prevents local units of government to pass an ordinance restricting where those dispatchers live. In Marion County, they have to live within the city limits of Indianapolis. So we're asking that they put in Indiana code a law that says you can't do that dispatchers can live outside the county where they work. This is going to help them with hiring, bring them in. Like I said, this one passed out of committee. It's in the Senate. It'll go before the Senate on seconds and thirds, and we don't expect any problems with that. Also, we're looking at airport firefighters, Indianapolis airport firefighters. They want to get into the 77 fund. They're currently in civilian perf. So we're tweaking the law that says that airport authority firefighters can join the 77 fund. It's specific in there that the Indianapolis Airport Authority or an airport authority can bring them in. It doesn't mandate that the airport has to do it, but it says they can.
Makes them eligible to be participants in the fund, yeah.
Right. And then also in this bill, in committee, it was amended. And what the amendment was, it increases the hiring age for firefighters. Currently in law, it says you have to be appointed before your 36th birthday. This amendment allows appointed before your 40th birthday. This was done to the police a few sessions ago. We stayed out of it because we didn't know if this was going to hurt the fund or not, because the older you bring somebody on, the chances of them going off on the disability increases. So our thought was, let's let the police do it for a few years. We'll monitor it, see if it's had any kind of negative impact on the fund. If it doesn't, then let's go ahead and do it for the fire also.
And that was the start, really, too, of their initial challenges at that time with recruitment. So it really sort of helped the police advance their recruitment efforts, too.
Correct. And now we're seeing recruitment on the fire side also. And Empers is saying they can't really measure if it's had a negative impact on the fund. So we're not opposing it. But if this passes, will allow up to 40th, before your 40th birthday, to get hired on a fire department.
Yeah.
And that one passed out of committee.
And we'll be monitoring that too. Assuming that it passes, we'll always keep an eye on that and see if that, if there is a negative effect of doing something like that, So we'll keep an eye, and we've got a great communication and relationship with the Empers managers, and also.
Yep. And then we've got a couple that we've got our hands on that we've been working with the authors on these, and this is deals with PFAS. We're learning more and more about PFAS every year. PFAS is in the foam that we use, the AFFF foam. It causes cancer. Like I said, we're learning more and more about it. A couple sessions ago, we banned the use of AFFF foam. Don't train with it. Don't demonstrate with it. Only use it for the intended purposes. And now we're looking at PFAS in our blood. Cancer in the fire service is on the rise. There's now correlation between PFAS and the cancer. So one of the bills has to do with monitoring firefighters' blood. We've been working with this legislator for the past 3 sessions, and what it's going to do is create a database. There'll be roughly 1,000 firefighters in Indiana, broken up in different sections of the Indiana, and volunteer basis, but have your blood tested and check the levels of the PFAS in it. A few years ago, we didn't know what levels were bad. Now we know what levels are bad, what levels are good, and start running some tests on firefighters to see if there's a correlation on that. That one's supposed to be getting a hearing on January 30th. And then the other one is our turnout gear has got PFAS in it. That's what makes it water repellent. So we want to look at putting labels on our protective gear that says this gear contains PFAS. Unfortunately, there's no manufacturer that makes PFAS-free turnout gear, but this is the beginning stages of starting to do some things about our turnout gear, and we're going to do some awareness from the PFFUI on what not to do with your turnout gear. We're going to be doing some public safety announcements with that in the future here, but this bill is going to be heard in committee next week, next Monday, and this will start bringing awareness to PFAS in our gear. And
help with some initiatives, I think, too, both working with the NFPA and trying to change the standard to allow for the elimination of the how they test gear with the UV. I think it's NFPA 1970 that's being evaluated right now. And the PFFUI did send a letter in the public comment that supported changing that standard, which will help, I think, alleviate the need and the use of PFAS chemicals in the gear.
And then there's a couple bills that's been filed that's more likely going to get sent to a summer study committee, probably PMOC, Pension Management Oversight Commission. And what that is it's a standing committee made up of the legislators, both Democrat and Republican, House and Senate, and they discuss pension issues. They cost out the pension, and then they give their seal of approval, and then it goes back to the next session. But those 2 bills are, one senator wants to look at change in our drop, deferred retirement option plan from a 3-year drop to a 5-year drop. They're going to have to study to see if that's got a cost factor to the fund. And then the other one is there's a senator looking at lowering the vesting age or the vesting time down to 10 years instead of 20. That's more likely going to have a cost, so he's asking that go to PMOC. So these two bills, if they go to PMOC, it's going to be this summer. If they get a favorable recommendation from PMOC, they'll come back in the 24 session to go through the process. So some of our members may be hearing about these issues. This isn't something that's probably going to pass this session. It's going to take some time to study it. And our main objective is we don't want to hurt the pension fund. We want this fund to be around for us and future members.
And it truly is that, when something goes to PMOC to be studied, they truly study it. And anything that has to do with the pension really sort of originates and should be looked at in that summer study to see if it's worthy of a bill going into the session. Because the one thing that nobody's interested in is wasting time or energy on a bill that hasn't been thoroughly vetted or has no chance of passing because it doesn't do anything or does something bad. So take a look at it, and this is the very, very early stage. But we know that members are talking about this and hearing about this, but we just kind of want to address that, and we'll be following this through the whole time. And Mike and I and Tom, our legislative team, also attend those PMOC meetings in the summer and have those conversations with legislators. It's a combined summer committee, both with Senate members and House members.
So what can our members do if they have any questions concerning any legislation or potential legislation for this General Assembly?
I think they need to call Tom Hannafy I'm just kidding, and call twice. Yeah. They can reach out to any of us, really. I mean, either Mike or myself or Tom, and we're all in constant, communication and working this together. Email is great too, or just even send a text. But I do encourage one of the best ways to sort of get some information about, and the session is fluid, so things change daily almost. We still have bills being filed, as Mike mentioned early on. But one way is to come to the legislative conference that we're going to have on February 21st. That's where we try to really update leadership so they can take that information back home. But also what we're doing more of is trying to provide information through our social media platforms with the PFFUI because we know that members are getting a lot of their information, especially the up-to-date, daily, hourly changing information. We want to provide that information through our social media platforms just to keep members updated. If there's something that they're interested in specifically, it's there, and provide clickable link to go look at the entire bill. But I think it's fair to say, using their district vice president or contacting us directly, if we have an answer, we'll be glad to provide it.
Yep. We're also there not only trying to usher our bills through, we're also looking at bills that are filed that could be a detriment to local units of government that deal with taxes. We dealt with last session the elimination of the business personal property tax. That was going to be a negative $1 billion a year loss to local governments or local units of government. And us and other organizations were successful in stopping that. This session here, there's been some bills filed to do that again. I don't think they have the steam like they did last session. But there's also a big push on capping the assessment on property taxes. We're watching all that and working through that to make sure that local units of government don't get hurt, because if they do, that's money that we can bargain for. So we're out there working, keeping an eye on that also.
And testifying where we need to be, on these issues to either for or against, particular measures. But, in addition to our interests, and I consider included in our interests, like Mike said, is funding and revenue sources for cities, towns, townships, territories, districts, all of those that where our members are and where our members are working. I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about, and I've gotten some calls about the funding that the governor has requested in his agenda for this legislative and budget session to go to expanding fire training in the state of Indiana to the tune of $24.5 million to help facilitate funding to already established regional training centers across the state. But in addition to that, increasing the number of regional training centers. And IDHS and Director Thacker and the fire marshal have obviously been working alongside the governor and his staff to build this program. If you haven't seen it, it's called the Hub and Spoke program, and it's out on the IDHS website. But really the effort is to, for the first time, insert a really respectable amount of funding into the fire service for training. There's some other things that are involved in those recommendations as well that go to the volunteer side of fire service with regard to some gear issues and items. So for the governor, for the first time that I'm aware of, the governor of Indiana has included fire service as a highlight in his legislative agenda or priorities for the budget cycle. In addition to that, I think that a lot of our members may have heard of the Governor's Commission on Health report that was recently released and is being talked about to get Hoosiers healthier and to do that through local communities, the health departments and all, but also for the first time, EMS in that report, EMS has been regarded as a essential component of healthcare and public health. So we have some opportunities there. I think if that particular side of the budget is funded to help increase the number of paramedics in the state, number of EMTs, and to help our departments do that with some offsetting of costs to get members trained up in that area. And to develop mobile integrated health programs, community paramedicine programs within the fire departments. This is a work that we're doing. A lot of our departments are really involved with this. So we're also going to be monitoring that as we go through the cycle and really supporting the EMS components of that as well. And maybe, I think, potentially in a podcast, we might be able to get Governor Holcomb to sit down with us on the podcast as well.
All right, gentlemen. Well, just thank you for all of your hard work. We just know that you're at the State House every day looking over our best interest, and we know that it's a marathon and not a sprint. So we look forward to seeing you guys here, there, and everywhere within the meantime. So thank you all for making time today, and we just thank you for all of your efforts. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you for listening to the PFFUI podcast. Follow us on social media by searching the Professional Firefighters Union of Indiana. For more information about news and upcoming events, visit www.pffui.com. Until next time, this is PFFUI Communications Director Erik Scheub. Stay safe.